What's happening, guys and girls? Acrinator here, and are you fucking ready for the biggest conspiracy theory I have ever come up with? Because I've been thinking about this nonstop for the past couple of days now, and I'm really excited. Granted, it's probably not true, but regardless, this is the most detective-like I've ever been for a series that's supposed to be all about that sort of stuff. So, let's take a deep breath, calm down, and dive straight into it. Mini seizure aside, this is a topic that's fascinated me for a while now, and to my knowledge, no one else has theorized about it that much. I'll give some ground in stating that there are a few logical leaps that have to be taken to get to where I'm about to take you, but it's not that far-fetched when everything's taken into account. Plus, no one else is proposing counterpoints yet, so fair game. During the most recent podcast, I talked briefly on how I explored the Ecopoint Antarctica map for the first time when the anniversary event came out. I just never got around to it when it first came out, so I figured this was as good a time as any. As usual, there are plenty of little lore bits to slowly fill in the gaps of what we already knew. Most of you likely already know about the sticky notes May left all over the place. They're all pretty lighthearted, albeit a bit dark with how alone they portray May as being. The real juicy Easter eggs, the ones that began the inspiration for this video, started in the laboratory spawn point. Along the walls, assuming you haven't already broken all the monitors, there are a bunch of readings from various scientific instruments. Most of them are showing the well-established disarray that the base is in, including the weather and energy problems. There are also a few microscopes on the workbenches that appear to have something under their lenses, as well as some sort of fuel station towards the back wall. These particular points will become relevant again later, so keep a mental note of them for now. The thing I want to focus on most right now is the holographic map near the center of the room. It displays a map that shows the current whereabouts of the base, radio tower, and some sort of anomaly in the vicinity. This information is corroborated with a small journal we find elsewhere in the map, likely written out before a complete overlay of the area could be established. All of this is very interesting, and it certainly leads to some kind of hidden lore that's meant to be pieced together at a later date, but I'm impatient. Blizzard isn't the kind of company to just put something in the game just for the hell of it. They obviously meant for this to mean something, otherwise they wouldn't have let us on with such a fake clue as this. So we've established that this anomaly is likely significant in the grand scheme of things when it comes to Ecopoint Antarctica, but how exactly is another issue entirely. Is this mystery the reason that the research team came to the frozen wasteland, or could it be the reason behind their tragic fate? For those of you who don't follow the lore as closely as I do, the backstory behind Ecopoint Antarctica is terribly dark and has plenty of room for plot twists. A team of 6 researchers, including our least favorite character May, set up shop in Ecopoint Antarctica under the supervision of Overwatch to study global weather patterns. A freak storm hit the base, and after trying to weather it out for a short period, the team was left with no other option than to enter their cryopods in the hope that someone would come to rescue them. Unfortunately, help didn't come for a whole 10 years, in which all the researchers besides May had met an untimely end. It's a tragic story for a crew of scientists who only wanted to help the world, but ended up succumbing to its icy wrath as a result. Now, if you'll allow, I'd like to poke some holes in this whole freak snowstorm claim. You see, there's a reason why very little life survives in Antarctica, and most of which that does relies on the surrounding oceans to live. It's a frozen hellhole! Even by today's standards, research teams in real life have to make all sorts of preparations before trekking into the southernmost landmass on Earth. Considering the average temperature there ranges from about -49 to -56 degrees Fahrenheit, or -45 to -48 degrees Celsius, it's pretty damn cold. And that's not even taking into account the wind chill, with average winds nearing 12.3 miles per hour or 19.8 kilometers per hour, and a record high being set at 199 miles per hour or 320 kilometers per hour. I refuse to believe that 6 scientists as highly regarded as these individuals came so ill-prepared for the seasonal storm such as these, especially considering they were running off of Overwatch's budget for their experiments. I don't care how bad the storm, anything short of a nuclear blast shouldn't have affected the Ecopoint as bad as it did. So that begs the question, what the hell happened? As I just stated, storms we'd consider once-in-a-lifetime events are commonplace down there, so what could have possibly gone so wrong for the scientists to take such desperate and experimental measures as the cryopods? The only answer that seems appropriate to me is that this unknown anomaly had something to do with it. It's the only unaccounted for factor in this whole crime scene, and the only thing that May's team couldn't have prepared for. So what exactly did it do? I think going back to the base will give us some clues to the answer we seek. What kinds of things can we find that appear out of the ordinary for a high-tech research facility? Well, the major ones would be that the windows in the cryo station are blown in, the station's batteries are almost all burnt out, there's tons of weather warnings, and all the pods minus May's failed, killing the researchers. The windows and the batteries can be written off to the disrepair the station was left in for nearly a decade, but the rest remains complicated. It's hard to tell whether the storm warnings are current or years old, but my guess would be that they're all recent. The monitors are still operating on what little power the station has left, and there's no apparent reason as to why they would stop at that exact moment in time. Unless they were affected by whatever knocked out 5 of the 6 cryopods. I know that cryotechnology was still experimental at the time, but 2 of the 6 researchers specified their studies in cryonics, and another was an engineer. If anyone could get the pods working in a life or death situation, it would probably be them. Not to mention that they wouldn't have stepped foot in them if they weren't certain that there was at least a decent chance for them to come out alive. That's not exactly the best way to commit suicide, and they could have just attempted a last-ditch effort to repair the radio tower if there really wasn't any other way. And besides, it doesn't make sense for May to have the only pod that didn't malfunction if they were in the early stages of development. My intuition tells me that some outside force, conscious or not, tampered with the base and caused most of the pods to malfunction. But what could basically fry everything at once, leaving the base utterly powerless against the forces of nature? What about an EMP? It's not entirely impossible that whatever is being picked up by the station's sensors has some electromagnetic properties. It could certainly explain how everything went downhill so fast, and how so many of the Ecopoint systems, including the radio tower, energy unit, and even the cryopods, just died. But how then could May have survived, you're probably wondering? This is where I have to reference her skill set in-game, and talk about her possible expertise with cryonics as well as climatology. Obviously, she has the move that freezes her solid for a period, which could be an attempt to reference her increased tolerance to extreme cold. But there's also her little robot buddy, Snowball. Anyone who's had to sit through May's ultimate ability knows this bugger all too well, and knows that it has a programmed knowledge of cryonics. Snowball is referenced in May's notes that are littered throughout the base, possibly meaning that she had it, or at least some prototype of it, before the big storm. Having such a handy little frozen Swiss Army knife at her disposal could have certainly given her a better chance at surviving for a decade. You may be asking now how Snowball would survive a potential EMP set off by the Anomaly, to which the answer lies within the cryopod itself, literally. EMPs have a difficult time traveling through metal, which the pods appear to be lined with, and if Snowball was in the pod with May when she entered, he could have had access to her life support systems. Ironic that the robot that's mercilessly assisted in so many cold-blooded murders in-game potentially saved May's life, but I digress. Here I've talked about the Anomaly and what it's potentially caused for a while now, but we haven't answered the vital question of what is causing the mystery in the first place. For that, we have to travel to the complete opposite side of the weather spectrum, and to the high-tech city of Oasis, specifically the university stage. In one of the spawn rooms, we find an object that's perplexed anyone who's taken time to really analyze it. I'm sure you can imagine where this is going, and yes, this is what I believe to have caused the Anomaly, or at least this kind of material. A bold claim, I know, and one that seems out of nowhere. Sure, these two maps have unanswered mysteries, but what's the connection between them? Remember back in Antarctica when I told you to take a mental note of a few things? We're revisiting those now. I asked you to pay attention to 2 things in particular, the microscopes and the fuel cell looking objects. Look around on the lab tables in Oasis's spawn. What do you see? The first thing you'll likely find are the dozens of microscopes scattered all about, all of which have the exact same thing under their display, the very same material that was found in the scopes in Antarctica. You may claim that this is just a default skin for a standard scientific tool, but remember, Blizzard doesn't do things without purpose, so no, I don't think this is a case of reusing a skin for the same object. These are the only 2 maps in-game currently that have microscopes, and I truly believe that Blizzard could be hinting that they are connected as a result. As for the fuel cells, you can find a few of those scattered about the workbenches as well. I think that this is just too great a coincidence for this not to mean something. What happened in Antarctica was random and unexplained by standard scientific knowledge, and whatever this thing is could very well have incredible properties. Why else would the university inside the most technologically advanced city in the world of Overwatch bother to study this glob of metal if it was just mercury or some other metallic liquid? It seems like a real waste of resources if that were the case. It would be on display rather than being scanned by high-tech sensory drones. Going further into the map, just below the capture point room, you'll find a corridor that's filled with what looks somewhat familiar. These look like a more advanced version of the fuel cells found back at the Ecopoint, if I'm not mistaken. Such a likely powerful energy source would be infinitesimally more reliable than mere batteries, don't you think? If we were to go to the opposite spawn from our glorious floating ball of goop, we find a giant tablet in the center this time, surrounded by more microscopes with the same material on display. Judging from the color of the stone being examined, it appears to be from the ruin segment of Ilios. Considering this is one of the only other maps in-game with a research setup throughout, and the fact that Talon has attempted to steal artifacts from here before, it doesn't entirely surprise me that this would be connected. Why would an organization like Talon care about dusty artifacts, unless they had some other use for them, like gathering and controlling an unstable substance that has unique properties? Perhaps this can be found in minute quantities in the stone of Ilios, and a much larger natural occurrence was unearthed nearby the Ecopoint. Maybe Talon was the cause of the Anomaly's fatal event. In trying to harness such power, they accidentally let loose an immense amount of energy from the source that sent the research base into a frozen hell. Keep in mind that this could prove true even if this metallic blob isn't what caused the anomaly. So that's case closed, right? We've explored all possible options that we can make given the information we currently know, and there's nothing left to cover, right? Not quite. There's one more piece of information that's bothered me ever since I first noticed it when exploring the maps, and for this, we'll have to go back to Antarctica. Here we are back in the cryolab, staring at the cryopods. Notice anything yet? No, I'm not talking about how Maze is open, that's too obvious. This is something I've seen countless YouTubers gloss right over, and I'm actually kind of surprised no one has made a fuss about this yet. Just to clarify though, this is all to my knowledge as of recording. I'm sure there's others out there who've noticed it and just haven't said anything. I'm guessing you still don't see it, so let me take you down the line. Here's the darkest roll call you'll ever have to sit through. May, Chinese climatologist with some possible expertise in cryonics. Arrhenius, Swedish climatologist. Torres, Spanish cryologist. Opara, Numbanian cryologist. Macready, American engineer. And Adams, American researcher? What was he researching? The other 5 members of the team were all researchers as well, but they had their specific field of expertise listed on their pod. So why is Adams listed as just a plain old researcher? Could he have been something of a lab assistant? If that's the case, why would he be invited to work with some of the world's most renowned scientists? It doesn't make any sense that he be the only one who's not designated some sort of focus in their work. The only thing that I can think of that could possibly explain this is that Adams was sent to work on a classified mission, either by Overwatch themselves or possibly the government. But what sort of classified work could one do in the depths of Antarctica? Unless someone knew about the anomaly long before the Ecopoint was ever established. It's well known that climate has never been a big selling point for well-funded research campaigns, unless there's something in it for the patrons of said campaign. Oil fields, economic status, or in this case, a possibly extremely valuable new substance with various properties that could be put to good use. Perhaps it wasn't Talon that unearthed whatever was causing the anomaly, but rather Adams. His prodding into a possibly unstable situation could have caused the mess that would ultimately take his life. I'll leave you with this one last piece. On the weather monitors in the Ecopoint's lab, the area of the highest intensity appears to be directly above where this mysterious anomaly is occurring. Whether you believe that's a coincidence or intentional is up to you. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this video. It took a long while to organize everything, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. If you did enjoy my fall into insanity, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like it, maybe even subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Links for my social media and whatnot are in the description below. And as for the comment question, what's your theory about this whole mess? There's a lot of information that no one's really addressed that much, so I'm sure there's other ways to look at this. Anyways, that's all the time I've got for today, so until next time, don't die.